In the beginning, the oceans were quiet. For millions of years, life drifted without purpose, without fear, without the idea of the hunt. But then, something changed. In the dim, hazy waters of the Cambrian world, new creatures opened their strange, faceted eyes for the first time. Eyes built not just to see, but to search. This was the moment when survival gained a new shape. The first hunters were nothing like the predators we know today. Their bodies were experiments, soft, jointed, alien. Their movements were sudden, unpredictable, almost mechanical. Anomalocaris, the giant among them, drifted through the water like a living shadow. Its grasping limbs were built to strike with precision, folding inward like blades. Its mouth, a swirling ring of hard plates, tested the world with a method no creature had used before. Nearby, Opabinia glided over the ocean floor, its 5 eyes scanning the ancient twilight. Its flexible proboscis searched the sand, ready to pull unsuspecting prey into the waiting darkness. These were not monsters. They were the prototypes of every predator that would ever exist. The blueprint of the hunt began here, among soft bodies, shimmering light, and the quiet tension of untouched seas. Before sharks ruled the oceans, before armor, before giants, before teeth. The world belonged to the first hunters. The world changed again, slowly, silently, and with a force that reshaped every living creature in the sea. As the oceans deepened and the continents settled, evolution began a new experiment. It forged armor, not the delicate shells of earlier times, but plates so dense and interlocked that they transformed living bodies into moving fortresses. These were the first armored hunters creatures built for dominance, precision, and overwhelming power. Among them rose a titan whose presence still echoes across deep time. Dunkleosteus, the armored colossus of the Devonian seas. It did not swim like a fish. It advanced like a machine carved from ancient stone, propelled by muscles strong enough to crack the bodies of its rivals. The water around it thickened with tension whenever it approached, as if the ocean itself recognized the return of something inevitable. Unlike the soft-bodied predators of the Cambrian world, Dunkleosteus was no experiment. It was a conclusion, a fully realized answer to the question of what a hunter could become when evolution poured all its focus into strength. Its skull was a puzzle of bony plates, sharp at the edges, layered with scars left by battles older than memory. Each mark was a story of pursuit, of triumph, of a world where survival belonged only to those who could tear through armor as easily as others tore through flesh. Its jaws were not made of teeth. They were made of sharpened bone sheets of living metal, capable of slicing through anything the ancient seas dared to offer. When its mouth closed, it did so without hesitation. The strike was faster than the blink of an eye, a movement crafted through millions of years of selective pressure. Some say the force of its bite rivaled that of modern apex predators. But Dunkleosteus needed no comparison. It was powerful in ways that defy modern scale. A creature that hunted with the quiet certainty of something that had never known fear. Imagine the ocean at that time. No whales, no sharks as we know them, no familiar silhouettes cutting through the blue. Instead, schools of armored fish shimmered like swimming mosaics. Fragile filter feeders drifted through the light in enormous numbers, unaware that they lived in the age of a killer engineered by time itself. In these waters, Dunkleosteus was more than a predator, it was a regulator. Its presence kept the ancient ecosystems in balance. When it hunted, the entire reef reacted. Movements shifted, currents changed, shadows stretched in warning. Smaller armored fish, sensing vibrations, scattered into the cracks of submerged cliffs. Even larger creatures, ones that should have stood their ground, gave way to the encroaching giant. For ages, the Devonian oceans flourished under the rule of armored hunters. Evolution favored strength, mass, and precision. Creatures grew plates thicker than stone and jaws sharper than obsidian. The seas glittered with the reflections of their metallic bodies, creating landscapes of living armor. But dominance came with a price. As armored predators grew larger and heavier, they demanded more energy, more territory, more prey. Their hunger stretched across the reefs. And slowly, invisibly, the balance began to shift. The oceans were changing once again. Temperatures fluctuated, coastlines reshaped, and ancient ecosystems faltered. These mighty hunters, so perfect for a world of abundance, found themselves cornered by the very pressures that had once shaped them. Dunkleosteus, the champion of bone and armor, was not defeated in battle. It was defeated by time, by the silent forces that sculpt planets and rewrite the rules of life. Its lineage faded, leaving behind only fragments, jaw plates, shards of skull, and the ghost of a predator that once ruled the seas with unmatched strength. Yet even in extinction, its influence endured. What it represented, power, precision, dominance, became a template for the hunters that would follow. When sharks emerged, they did not rise into a world of peace. They entered an ocean that had already known giants, creatures built to tear through armor and command entire ecosystems. The first sharks inherited a kingdom left behind by giants, a kingdom shaped by the rise and fall of armored hunters, a kingdom carved in the image of Dunkleosteus. And though millions of years have passed, the memory of that ancient titan remains preserved in stone and in the very idea of what a predator can be. Before the seas belonged to sharks, and long before whales carved their paths through the deep, another dynasty rose from the shadows of prehistory. Swift, armored, relentless. They were not fish. They were not reptiles. They were something far older, forged from the earliest blueprint of predation itself. They were the eurypterids, giant sea scorpions that once ruled the shallow waters of Earth. For millions of years, these creatures dominated coastlines and river mouths, sweeping through ancient currents with a speed that defied their heavy exoskeletons. Some were no larger than a hand. Others stretched 3 meters in length, their claws sharp enough to grip struggling prey, and their bodies built to move with uncanny grace beneath the waves. In the murky shallows of the Silurian and Devonian worlds, the eurypterids were sovereign. They hunted with precision, guided by senses far more advanced than many of their contemporaries. Their compound eyes, set wide on their armored heads, captured every flicker of motion across the sediment floor. Their claws curved, serrated, efficient, closed with quiet certainty around anything slow enough to fall behind. The ocean floor trembled when the largest among them passed. Their long, paddle-like limbs allowed them to glide through the water with a smooth, confident rhythm. They moved without sound, without warning, leaving only a swirling trail of disturbed sand in their wake. Imagine standing at the edge of a Devonian shoreline. The water is warm, heavy with minerals, thick with early plant life. The reef at your feet is alive with ancient fish that sparkle in the filtered sunlight. Everything seems calm, but beneath that stillness lies tension, a prickling awareness shared by every creature in the shallows, for they all recognize the shadow of the scorpion. The eurypterids shaped these ecosystems not by sheer size alone, but by the diversity of their forms. Some species were ambush predators, hiding beneath layers of sediment, revealing only their eyes as they waited for prey to drift too close. Others were agile pursuit hunters, racing across the seafloor with claws extended, ready to seize anything fleeing in panic. A few even ventured onto land for brief moments, using their sturdy legs to explore the damp margins of early shorelines. In a world still learning how to breathe, the sea scorpions had already mastered the art of conquest. Their weapons were not as dramatic as the bone blades of Dunkleosteus or the spinning jaws of Helicoprion. Instead, their strength lay in strategy, adaptability, and an uncanny balance between speed and armor. Their bodies were mosaics of interlocking plates, flexible enough for rapid movement, yet sturdy enough to deflect attacks from other predators. They were evolution's first attempt at building an apex hunter that did not need sheer mass to dominate. Over time, some eurypterids grew even larger. One species, Dunkleosteus renaniae, reached lengths rivaling those of crocodiles. Its claws alone spanned nearly half a meter. Imagine those great arms sweeping through murky water, pulling a helpless prey into a waiting maw armed with serrated edges. To the smaller creatures of that world, a glimpse of those claws was the final sight they would ever see. But the reign of the scorpion lords was tied intimately to the shallows. As the planet continued to change, currents shifting, coastlines rising and falling, the habitats that had sustained them began to disappear. New predators emerged, creatures faster, lighter, and more specialized. The competitors they once outmatched grew smarter and more efficient. The long dynasty of the eurypterids began to fade. Their final decline was not dramatic. There was no single cataclysm, no sudden collapse. Instead, it was a slow retreat, a steady shrinking of territory, a gradual loss of dominance. Their great forms dwindled, becoming smaller, less imposing, until eventually they slipped quietly into extinction. But the legacy of the sea scorpions would not be forgotten. Their methods, the ambush strategies, the pursuit tactics, the armored mobility became the foundation upon which future hunters would rise. They were early masters of speed, stealth, and precision, long before any fish or shark claimed the throne. In the deep record of Earth's oceans, their story endures as a testament to a forgotten era, a time when the most feared hunters in the sea walked on legs, wielded claws like spears, and moved with the silent confidence of creatures born to rule. The scorpion lords may be gone, but the ocean still remembers them, long before sharks refined the art of predation, and long before the oceans found the shapes we know today. Evolution entered one of its most creative and most dangerous periods. It was a time when life did not yet understand its limits, a time when the boundaries of biology were flexible, when bodies were blueprints rather than finished designs. This was the age of experiments. The ancient oceans were crowded not with perfected hunters, but with prototypes, organisms that tested what a predator could be. Some succeeded brilliantly. Others vanished almost as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only fragments and questions. As we move through this forgotten world, we see creatures shaped by innovation and instability. Their bodies were unfamiliar, sometimes beautiful, sometimes grotesque, always extraordinary. One such experiment was the placoderm lineage. While Dunkleosteus became the iconic titan, countless other species filled the seas with forms that bordered on surreal. Some had elongated snouts ending in jagged ridges, designed to scrape prey from coral shelves. Others possessed bodies compressed into razor-thin blades, slicing silently through the water. Their armor varied from delicate, scale-like patterns to thick plates that wrapped their heads like helmets forged by blind artisans. But even these strange fish were only the beginning. In the lower reaches of ancient reefs, small predators evolved mouthparts so intricate they resembled mechanical tools. Some had jaw structures that opened vertically, others horizontally, and a few both allowing them to attack from angles no modern creature attempts. There were species whose teeth formed spirals, lattices, or chains, architectures of bone designed for a single purpose: to solve the puzzle of feeding in a world full of new opportunities. The oceans became laboratories of living possibility. Every evolutionary shift triggered another. Every success inspired a counter-strategy. In shadowed waters, early cartilaginous fish emerged creatures that would one day give rise to sharks and rays. But in this early stage, they looked nothing like the streamlined hunters we know. Their bodies were inconsistent, almost chaotic. Some were broad and disc-like, drifting with wing-like fins. Others were long and eel-like, undulating in uneven waves. Their skeletons, made of cartilage rather than bone, gave them strange, fluid movement predators in liquid form. Yet even these experiments struggled to define themselves. Many species vanished quickly, unable to compete with the established armored hunters or the rising scorpion lords of the shallows. Still, evolution kept pushing forward. In deeper water, bizarre creatures tested new sensory systems. Some developed elongated snouts, packed with electroreceptors, capable of detecting faint pulses from hidden prey. Others grew ridged plates along their sides, precursors to later lateral lines that recorded vibrations from hundreds of meters away. It was a world where perception mattered as much as teeth, where survival depended not only on strength, but on foresight. Perhaps the most haunting experiments occurred among organisms that straddled the line between fish and something more ancient. These transitional species, rare in the fossil record, displayed features unlike any creatures alive today. Jaws that folded outward like petals, spines that arched into serrated crowns, fins that stiffened into weapons or unfurled like sails. Each body was a hypothesis. Could this structure succeed? Could life take this direction? Most answers were no, but every no left behind data genetic possibilities that future species could adopt or refine. And then there were the giants that evolution discarded almost immediately. Enormous predators with inefficient bodies, too heavy to maneuver, too slow to dominate, yet still remarkable in their scale. Some reached lengths rivaling early whales, but lacked the precision required for sustained survival. They were colossi of potential visions of what the ocean might have become under different pressures. Extinction was their inevitable end, but extinction, in the grand narrative of life, is not failure. It is the closing of a chapter that makes room for another. Every strange form, every improbable creature, every evolutionary gamble contributed to a larger story. They shaped the world that sharks would inherit. They determined the weapons and strategies that future predators would wield. The earliest fish, armored giants, sea scorpions, and shifting prototypes, all of them laid the groundwork for the apex hunters that would one day rule the oceans. The experiments of evolution were chaotic, but not meaningless. They were the trials through which life learned its craft. And though these creatures are gone, replaced by forms more stable and efficient, the ocean still carries echoes of their attempts. In the ridges of modern fish, in the instincts of modern predators, in the shadows of deep water, where strange ideas still surface from time to time. Before sharks perfected their reign, evolution's imagination wandered freely, sculpting worlds of creatures that defy expectation. They may be extinct, but their experiments remain etched into the blueprint of life itself. The age of experiments began to fade. Slowly at first, then with a steady, irreversible sweep, the world shifted beneath the ancient oceans. Currents changed. Temperatures drifted. Entire coastlines rose and vanished as the continents reassembled themselves like drifting puzzle pieces. The seas that once glowed with armored giants and strange prototypes began to quiet. And into that quiet came something new. The first true sharks did not arrive as conquerors. They emerged cautiously, almost humbly, their bodies small, their forms unfinished. At a glance, they hardly resembled the apex predators we know today. But within them lived a blueprint cleaner, sharper, more efficient than that of any predator before. While the placoderms carried armor heavy enough to burden their movements, the sharks carried almost nothing. While the sea scorpions relied on limbs and exoskeletons, the sharks relied on fluidity and speed. While the experimental fish of earlier ages struggled with their own contradictions, the sharks were quietly, elegantly balanced. Evolution had found a design it could refine for the next 400 million years. But in their early days, these primitive sharks were not dominant. They hunted carefully at the edges of reefs, avoiding the armored hunters, still clinging to their fading power. They fed in shadows and shallow currents, waiting for opportunities rather than creating them. They were small, unthreatening, and in many ways unremarkable. Yet they possessed something the others did not: adaptability. Their bodies were light enough to grow in any direction evolution demanded. Their senses, though simple, were infinitely expandable. Their skeletons, made of cartilage instead of bone, gave them a flexibility older predators could not match. Meanwhile, the giants that once ruled the oceans were succumbing to pressures far beyond their control. The world was changing too fast for bodies built on ancient rules. As reefs collapsed and food chains shifted, the armored lords grew weaker. The sea scorpions, once masters of the shallows, found their environments shrinking into narrow pockets of survivable habitat. The experimental predators, unstable by nature, disappeared one by one, leaving only fossils to hint at their strange designs. The inheritance of the ocean lay unclaimed. And in that vast vacuum, the sharks stepped forward. They grew larger, faster, more refined. Their senses sharpened, detecting faint electrical signals, subtle vibrations, distant movements through shifting currents. Their bodies lengthened into hydrodynamic silhouettes, capable of slicing through water with effortless precision. For the first time in history, the oceans belonged to hunters, built not on excess, but on efficiency. The reign of the armored giants ended. The scorpion lords faded. The strange prototypes vanished into extinction's quiet archive. But the sharks thrived, and they would continue to thrive through mass extinctions, climate shifts, and ancient upheavals that erased countless species forever. While titans fell, sharks endured an unbroken legacy stretching across deep time. When we look into the ocean today, we do not see the first predators. We see their successors, the inheritors of a throne forged by millions of years of trial and error, competition and collapse, brilliance and failure. The story of predation did not begin with sharks, but for now, it rests with them. The ancient oceans shaped our world through cycles of innovation and extinction, and every creature, strange, armored, or forgotten, played its role in the grand experiment that led to the oceans we know today. If you've journeyed with us through these forgotten ages, through the rise and fall of the first hunters, through worlds both alien and familiar, then you've seen how deep time still echoes in the creatures that swim beside us. And there is so much more hidden in the depths. So, if you want to continue exploring the lost oceans, the unknown giants, and the creatures that time left behind, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and join us as we dive even deeper into the mysteries of the ancient seas. Because the ocean still remembers. And together, we can discover what else it has yet to reveal.